Good morning. It is time for us to begin. Welcome to the forum. My name is Kathy Hebers. I'm one of the 4 facilitators. And today we're going to talk about ballot issues. Ballots and voting and issues have become such a huge thing. And we're very pleased to have 2 ladies here to explain things to us. The first is Nancy Ball. Nancy was born and raised in Los Angeles, but luckily she moved to Montrose from Orange County over 30 years ago. While working as a realtor, she met her husband Norm, who has been her sidekick ever since. She's been involved in a number of civic organizations. Right now, she's a district judge. No, election official. I promoted you. She's a district election official, and she is very active in the League of Women Voters, having served in a number of positions, including past president, right? Never? I notice no one is president right now. They need a president if you want to do that. She's currently a member of the board. So we welcome Nancy. She's going to talk about the little booklet that you got. And if there's anybody who didn't get one, please raise your hand so we can, okay, there are 2 right there, Bob. Our second speaker is Tressa Guynes. She also relocated to Montrose. She came from Mississippi, having served over 30 years in public administration while she was there. She advanced through various positions, eventually becoming the state chief examiner and finishing out her career there as the secretary of the Mississippi State Senate. She has been the Montrose County Clerk and Recorder since 2015. She's active in a number of organizations as well. And so, Tressa, we're happy to have you here today also. We've decided Nancy will go first and Tressa will go second, and we'll hold questions till the end to make sure both have adequate amount of time to speak. So, Nancy, we're going to turn this over to you.
Thank you. Welcome. It's so nice to see you. Can you hear me? No.
Try it again.
Hello. I'm going to speak like this. Thank you for coming.
Do you want the handheld?
No.
Okay.
Thank you for coming today. I want to start out immediately because there's so much information to impart. So I'm going to tell you 5 things right off the bat, and keep those in mind as I go forward. Thank you. Measures that can go on the ballot in odd-numbered years in Colorado are limited to topics that concern taxes and state fiscal matters under TABOR. That's 1. All 3 of the issues I'm going to talk to you about today came to the ballot via citizen initiatives, not the legislature. And number 3, in the interest of time, I'm not going to read the legalese. You'll see it's 1 sentence about that long, but I'll break it down. 4, a yes vote on the proposal means you are for it. A no means you are against it. And 5, on the slides, I will list the number of organizations that are pro and con. But in the ballot issues booklet, it actually lists those organizations. So let's get started. Amendment 78, legislative authority for spending state money. There's the ballot issue language so you can see what I mean. This is an initiated amendment to the Constitution of the state, so it requires 55% of the vote to pass. And in a nutshell, it would transfer the power to appropriate state revenue not generated through taxes, custodial money, from the state treasurer, which of course is the executive branch, to the state legislature, that General Assembly. So things to consider. What are custodial funds? It is defined as money received from outside the state that must be used for a particular designated purpose. The state acts as the custodian of the money to ensure that it is spent on the intended purpose. Mainly this includes money received from the federal government, but also grants, legal settlements, or donations from a private individual or an organization. Current law requires that the state treasurer place the custodial funds in a separate account and inform the General Assembly about the money, and then the departments need to include that money in their budgets, how the funds were spent or will be spent, but legislative approval is not required. So the money can be spent immediately. In the proposed law, it creates a new fund, the Custodial Funds Transparency Fund, and it requires the legislature to hold a public meeting with opportunity for public comment every year, and then allocate the spending of the custodial funds. Also, interestingly enough, any interest earned on the money in the new fund would be placed in the state's general fund, and where it may be used for any purpose, and this would delay appropriation of the funds. Those in support say the amendment would ensure that all state money is allocated by the legislature, so it would help with necessary oversight. Whether it's settlement money, stimulus funds, whatever, there should be a public hearing where elected officials can get feedback from their constituents, because Coloradans deserve an open process where there is transparency about how state funds are being spent. Those opposed, there are none. Oh, let me go through it. It would duplicate the administrative process already in place. There's no need to go through the legislature because the funds can only be spent on the designated items. Passing this through the legislature would not change the eventual outcome, but would only slow the process and would add administrative expense. The requirement to have a separate fund with earnings from that fund returned to the general fund, it might give the state incentive to delay the spending, and it denies the provider of those funds any income they could have used in the interim. You can see no opposition. However, a lawsuit has already been filed on this, saying that it doesn't fall into the TABOR category, so it shouldn't even be on the ballot, or that the votes for the measure should not be counted. So we'll see what happens with that. Next one, Proposition 119, Learning Enrichment and Academic Progress Program, LEAP. This is an initiated amendment to the Colorado Revised Statute, so only needs a simple majority to pass. This would increase the marijuana retail sales tax by 5% by 2024 and divert school trust lands revenue in order to raise $137,600,000 to fund an out-of-school education program and create the Colorado Learning Authority to govern that program. It provides out-of-school learning and enrichment opportunities to eligible children ages 5 to 17. Out-of-school learning and enrichment opportunities include tutoring in some academic subjects. Also, it provides music and art and more, such as assistance for special needs students, second language training, academic learning support materials, career and technical education training programs, social emotional learning, and mental health services. And parents would choose which program their children would attend, and then payments go directly to the providers. So, the Colorado Learning Authority would be a new state agency that would be created under this bill, and it would be independent from oversight by the State Board of Education and by the Colorado Department of Education. Its 9-member board of directors, no more than 5 of whom can be of one political party, is initially appointed by the governor with consent of the Senate, and subsequent members would be recommended by that initial board. Then the Learning Authority Board would develop the criteria for the selection and the certification of providers, and then it would prepare a list. School districts, charter schools, and member districts, of which RE1J is a member, are pre-certified. And then parents select a provider from that list made available by the board. And as you can see, well, I'll get to that in a moment. Then the state treasury would create a separate fund, the LEAF fund, to be administered by the Colorado Learning Authority. Youth and families at or below the federal level are given first priority, followed by youth in families with incomes up to twice the federal poverty level. Providers are chosen by the parents, and they're paid $1,500 per student per year. And I highly recommend that you read pages 30 to 34 in your blue book to learn the particulars of the LEAP's Board of Directors' powers and duties and the funding. So, the state sales tax on retail marijuana and marijuana products would be increased from the current rate of 15% to 20% by 2024 and each year thereafter. And about $21 million in revenue generated by the school trust lands would be diverted annually from its fund, the school land trust, would go into the state general fund to help pay for LEAP. I didn't know what the school trust lands was, so it said that the Colorado State Land Board is the second largest landowner in the state. It owns, stewards, and leases 4 million acres of trust land in order to earn money for Colorado public schools. It is guided by a plan that has a vision of making possible capital funding for modernization of Colorado public schools. Those in support say it helps close the gap between families that can afford the enrichment programs and opportunities and those who cannot. It supports education needs of low-income students and will help make up for program losses in recent years. LEAP creates opportunities for teachers to earn money as program providers. Those opposed say that this could be considered a voucher program because it allows public money to be directed to private, out-of-school service providers instead of investing it directly into public schools to restore the programs recently lost and provide additional learning opportunities for students. It says public dollars set aside for education are needed to support public education. The pandemic has contributed to learning gaps for low-income students, but there's no requirement for parents to choose an academic subject. And it may not address the lack of providers in rural areas. And this initiative establishes programs that compete with public schools, and increasing the tax will increase the price gap between legal and black market marijuana businesses, thereby hurting those legitimate businesses. Now here's the problem. This, again, you know, you read the blue book. This would amend the revised statute, so it just needs a majority to pass. Here is the ballot language. If you read the blue book, you know this is very messy. A note on page 2 and page 15 says the description of this proposition differs from the language on the ballot because a law was passed by the legislature after the ballot question was written, and it changed the effect of the measure. And I'll tell you more about that law. So, it was initially written to permanently lower the tax assessment rates for most non-residential property from 29% to 26.4%, and for all residential property from it should be 7.15%, to 6.5%. However, the Senate passed a bill in June that established new categories of property so that the lower non-residential rate applies only to lodging, and the lower residential rate applies only to multi-family housing property. The last one, there wouldn't be a $103 billion reduction, but it does allow for $25 million to come to local governments to compensate for revenue losses. And what it does is it authorizes the state to retain and spend $25 million above the TABOR cap, provided it's used to fund existing property exemptions, like the homestead exemption. So, city school districts, special districts, including police, fire, and libraries, are all funded by property taxes. The initiative's reductions in assessment rates would lower the revenue for each of these entities. There might be an offset from the revenue reduced because of increases in property values. However, the decrease in the assessment rate will affect all districts, regardless of the changes in property values. And remember, the effect of this proposition has changed due to the passage of that bill. So a yes vote now means, you'll see that ballot, but a yes vote now means that it would lower property tax assessment rates for multifamily housing and lodging, does not impact assessment rates for other types of residential and non-residential property. A no means the assessment rates for lodging and multifamily housing properties that are now in the current law, which is that new bill. And I do have those rates if you want to know, but, well, I might as well say them. It would be only for 2 years, and it's 6.5 for multifamily, and all other residential 6.95. And then for agriculture or renewable energy production property, it goes from 29% to 26.4. So I'm going to go through these fairly quickly because everything has really changed. Messy. But what they're saying is that with this new law, it might ease pressure on rents and encourage investment in housing, and it might help lodging owners hire more employees and reduce lodging rates. And again, this is the people who are opposed. Cuts revenue needed by local entities in special districts. Local entities cannot raise the mill levy without an election because of TABOR requirements. Once the rates are cut, TABOR requires a difficult, uncertain process, and the $25 million may not occur, and it's only granted for 5 years. So that one is a messy one. So, if you'd like some more information on what's on your ballot, please go to vote411.org. And I thank you for coming today.
And again, we'll have questions at the end for either of the two ladies. Tressa.
We're down to one by handheld, so we're going to be shuffling.
That's okay. I'm Tressa Guynes. I'm your county clerk and recorder. There's handouts on the table. Everybody should have a sample ballot, which is the yellow sheet of paper. And that gives you, if you've not received your ballot in the mail, I got mine yesterday, so you should have received your ballot already. If not, that's the sample of what your ballot will look like that you'll get. A couple of things I wanted to talk about on the start. There's a couple of other handouts. One is about ballot tracks. You probably got the email, text message, voice message. You're automatically signed up for that if you have an email account, phone number, or home phone number in the voter registration system. The state, that is not us that do that. The county did not do that. My office did not do that. The state decided that that was what they wanted to implement statewide. It's becoming very popular and very well received, but there's misunderstandings with it. So if you got an email that says your ballot was sent, what that means is the print vendor sent you your ballot. It does not mean that you voted your ballot and it's been sent to us, or that somebody else voted your ballot and it's been sent to us. That's been a misunderstood feature of that. When we receive your ballot, after you've voted it and after you mail it to us or drop it in the drop box, you'll get an email, voicemail, text message, however it is that you got it, that says that your ballot has been received. And then once it goes through our processing and our election judges have accepted it, you'll get a message that says your ballot has been accepted. So it's actually a good feature for that, and simply it is just a ballot tracking process. That's all it is. So also there's another handout that gives a little bit more detail about the retabulation that we're doing here in Montrose County. There's a number of other counties within the state of Colorado that are interested in doing that, and they're signing up for that. So I know that we're cut for time, and there's been a lot of questions with the retabulation. This is not a recount. There is a distinct difference in recount versus retabulation. This handout, there's a few extras if you didn't get one. It's just a typed out. Based on the questions that I'm getting, and like I said, for the sake of time, I went in this morning, drafted this up. Don't think there's any typos in it, but that is just kind of to answer some of the questions that you're getting that are a little bit more detailed than what we can get into today. But this, what Montrose County is doing is it's a retabulation of the ballots that were voted and accepted in the November 2020 election, this past one. And we felt like it was a valuable tool to sign up for and to do because of the community concerns regarding the Dominion voting system, the results, election results. I want to be clear, we as election officials, we aren't questioning the election results of the Dominion equipment. We are not questioning the Dominion equipment. We have seen no evidence whatsoever of any vote flipping or any algorithms or anything like that. So that is us in Montrose County, but for the sake of the community and the misunderstanding and concerns that are out in the community, we just decided that it was a valuable tool that we wanted to implement. Yes, it is expensive. It's over $18,000 to do this task, but we feel like it will resolve a lot of concerns. Clear Ballot, the reason we chose Clear Ballot to do this is it is the only other certified voting system in the state of Colorado. It's the obvious extreme competitor to Dominion. 62 counties have Dominion because they were certified first, and there was a transition from that counties had to go with from their old voting system because there's a lifespan for electronics, about 10 years, and most counties were reaching that lifespan, so they bought Dominion equipment, Dominion voting equipment, and started using that. And then subsequently, after 62 counties had purchased Dominion, is when Clear Ballot was certified. So there's 2 counties in the state that use Clear Ballot. That's Garfield County and that is Douglas County. Those are the only 2 states that use Clear Ballot, but it's the obvious competitor. They would probably love nothing else but to prove that Dominion's results were miscounted. However, El Paso has already done a retabulation of their November 2020 election, and their results were the same. So we don't expect any difference in the results. This is just to prove using a completely separate, unbiased, independent voting system that is of no relation and a competitor to Dominion to recalculate, retabulate the vote interpretation of the ballots that we accepted in the November election. So wanted to talk about voter integrity. That's a hot topic right now. And I think a big piece to take away is the state of Colorado, specifically Montrose County, because I'm directly involved in Montrose County and I can speak for Montrose County. The key components, the fundamental components that we have for safeguards to ensure the integrity of the election. It is very important. We've been conducting a mail ballot. The state of Colorado is a mail ballot state since 2013. So we have had years and years in elections. Last year we had 4 elections. This year we only have 1. Next year we'll have 3. So we have been doing this for a long time. We've got great processes in place. We perfect the processes every time that we have an election. If we see a weakness, we go in and address it. Number 1, legislative action. That's critical. When you implement a mail ballot process, you need to have legislative action, and that is law. So what that sets up is a process. Here's how you follow it. You don't just implement a mail ballot process and say, go figure it out as you go. You have legislative action, which means several things. You have a process, and then you have accountability. If the election official, out of ignorance or out of whatever laziness, whatever it would be, doesn't follow the process, then there's an accountability. There's a law that was broken, and there's a process to address that. So legislative action, key fundamental. Oversight and accountability. The Secretary of State is our oversight. We also have election judges that was referred to. Nancy is one of them. We have watchers, we have observers, and we also have ourselves, our election staff, where we hold each other accountable, and everybody is involved in it, and everybody knows what's going on. So there is an accountability factor. We don't send our team of judges home and then do things in the middle of the night. That would be a concern. We don't do that. We're very transparent. 24/7 video surveillance. We have the cameras rolling all the time. And we secure those. We capture that and we save that for 25 months after the election. So in the event, later on after the election, like right now as it compares to the November 2020, we can go back, we can pull those records, and we can go to a specific date, we can go to a specific time, and we can view everything that happened. Everything that we do election related is under camera, 24/7. Same thing with our Dropbox outside, it is the same thing. My election officials, all the election officials and anybody that touches the SCORE database, which we'll get into in just a minute, we're required to have background checks. Not just once when we come on board, but every year. Every year we have a background check. We administer oaths. We look into, we investigate whether anybody's been involved in election fraud or anything like that. So there's that accountability piece, and then there's tons of training. Monday, we had an election judge training. I think it went for 3 or 4 hours. And then there's more, that's just the group as a whole, where we talk about what addresses everybody as a whole, and then each individual breaks out at some point and they have their specific role training. So that piece is really important too. Speaking of election judges, we use bipartisan teams, which means Democrat and Republican for everything that they do. It takes two, everything's dual control. They're true party affiliated, long-time party affiliated. So for an example, and we have had this happen, if an unaffiliated person contacts us and says, hey, I want to be an election judge, we say, no, you don't qualify because you're not affiliated with the party. And then the next day, if they contact us and say, hey, I'm now a Democrat, I just changed my party affiliation, we say, no, you don't qualify because you've not been a long-term, long-dedicated, long-time affiliated judge. And we think that that's a very important piece of it because that represents true accountability and a true value of the bipartisan piece of it. I talked about SCORE, the statewide voter registration database. That is a huge component of what we do. The value of that and where we get that information is across the state, and this is just the state of Colorado, but it's across the state. So this system talks to every county in the state of Colorado. For an example, if someone is registered here in Montrose County and they're an eligible elector and their residence is here in Montrose County, they will be given a vote. I mean, they will be given a ballot. If they have a summer home or a winter home somewhere else in another county and they vote their mail ballot and we've received it and they go to another county to vote to try to, they're interested in a particular item on that ballot in another county, the election officials there, they access, when they go in and interact with that eligible elector from the start, they go into the database and they see that that person's already voted, and so they reject. They aren't allowed, that person, they turn them away. They're not allowed to vote twice. So there's a great safeguard with that within the state. And I want to just go over all of the databases that we use and that we get sources of information from. How do we know that someone changed their residence? How do we know that that they're not a resident of the county anymore? How do we know that they passed away? And this is the list, and this is the main ones, but there's other sources that we use also. So when the individual registers to vote, or when they get online to govotecolorado.gov and they change their affiliation, change their mailing address, whatever it is, we get those notifications daily. And we update our database. Now that's another piece. Not only do we get these notifications, we actually take that information and implement it in our system. So you have to do that piece of it too. Our system's current on a daily basis. Our monthly updates that we get are the Department of Public Health and Environment, and that's for deceased voters. So if anyone passes away and they're issued a death certificate, we get notified of that. The Postal Service, the National Change of Address. So if anyone's moved at all, moved within the county or moved outside of the county or moved outside of the state, we're notified of that. The Department of Revenue, when people go and either get a driver's license or change their address or change their name, they got married, we're notified of all of that. The Department of Corrections, when someone is incarcerated and they've gotten their voter rights removed, then we're notified of that and we make them an ineligible voter. Online voter registration, I mentioned that, and we get notified of that on a regular basis. Now, another key component to where we're involved with other states is there's a database that is Electronic Registration Information System, ERIC. You may have heard it called ERIC. And that is over 30 states are participating in that. They have the ability to do that. And at the end of the election, we submit who our eligible electors are and who voted. And it goes into one mass database. They filter it out, and that's where they find if someone voted in the state of Colorado or someone voted in the state of Oregon or Washington State. And that's where they're able to vet that out, and those go to law enforcement when that happens. So that's a real important piece. Other states that implemented a mail ballot at the last minute last year, if they don't have a statewide voter registration database to determine who's eligible, first ballots received. So an example of that is during the voter service polling centers, we have machine voting. If you're an eligible elector active, you would have received a mail ballot, which this is what it looks like. You would have received this in the mail. I got mine yesterday as an example. Let's say this person received their mail ballot, they vote their mail ballot, they come and hand deliver it and put it in our drop box right at the base of the stairs at the old courthouse. Then they walk up the stairs and they sign up to vote on the machine. So with that quick process, just a matter of walking up the stairs, we will not have collected and received their mail ballot at that moment. But they can go upstairs and vote on the machine. And then sometime, if that were to happen, they could walk out the door and say, ha ha ha, I was able to vote twice. But the problem with that is when we do go down to the drop box an hour later, whatever the time period is, a team of 2 people, they go down and they collect those ballots, and we take them back to our office, and on the back of the envelope where you signed it, there's a barcode. We scan those barcodes in and it says, Joe Schmo has already voted. He just voted in person. And we would reject that ballot. We would put it in a reject file and in a reject bucket, and we would notify the district attorney that that person tried to vote twice. That is illegal. So there's the component that is involved in the statewide voter registration database that prevents people from voting twice. I was speaking last night and I had a lady ask me, her mother had received her mail ballot. She was an eligible elector. She voted her ballot, she signed it, she turned it in, and a week before the election day, she passed away. Did her vote count? Yes, it did, because she was an eligible elector. She's the one that voted her ballot. She's the one that signed the back of it. We received it and accepted it. So it was prior to, just because she voted previously and we received her ballot previously doesn't mean her vote doesn't count if she subsequently passed away. So like I said, we have solid processes involved that we follow strictly. Every county in the state of Colorado follow it. Another thing I want to point out is machine voting. I talked about that for a second, and on the back of your yellow sheet of paper, the second sheet, is a piece of paper that looks like this. When you come in and vote on the machine in person, it's an electronic voting. So you have a touch screen and it brings up what looks like the ballot, the visual aspect of the ballot, and you hit, yes, I want to vote for whomever it is that you want to vote for. At the end of all of your votes, you hit review, and it will have a review, a summary of of the candidates and the items that you voted for. And if you agree with that, yes, I intended to vote for whomever, yes, I intended to vote no or yes for the particular proposition, then you hit accept and you hit print ballot. This is what comes out. This is printed. This is what comes out of the machine. So it's not electronic. Then, as you can see, there's items down there. Now, this is a sample, so we're not going to have particular names or particular propositions on here. That's why it says blank contest. We didn't vote that. We just wanted this to be a sample. But the voter will look at that and say, yes, I intended to vote for all of these items on here. At that point, they have to give us this piece of paper because this is their ballot. This is their ballot. If they think that this is a receipt, or if they think that this is a souvenir and they fold it up and put it in their pocket and walk off, their vote does not get counted. We do not capture their vote electronically. It is a paper trail. That is very important, and that is a great misunderstood piece of what goes on in the voting system, is everything is paper trail, everything is paper verified. So the ICX, that's the machine vote. If you vote on the machine, you have to give us your ballot for your ballot to count and for us to be able to scan it. That's another key component, is at the end of the election or at the end of the day, we balance everything. We know 25 people came and voted on the machine in person. Yes, we have 25 ICX ballots. We have 25 ballots here. 82 people came in and gave us their mail ballot in the drop box. We have 82 ballots that we know received in the drop box. Same thing with mail ballots. We track everything. We balance at the end of the day. We balance at the end of the election. And that is another very important factor that we do. We do that diligently, but we also are required to do that within the state, is to balance number of eligible electors, number of ballots received, number of people that voted. We were hearing through the media, and you don't really know if it's the truth or not. If it's over 100% voter turnout, they received more ballots than they have eligible voters. That's because they don't balance. That's a problem. That is a concern. You don't hear about that in the state of Colorado because we're required to balance that feature. So that's really important. One of the things that I wrote on the voter tabulation is that we conduct a number of tests and a number of audits. We conduct tests and audits before the election. We're testing the election equipment, and we conduct tests and audits after the election. The logic and accuracy test, we do an in-house one because we want to know, does our equipment work? Does it tabulate the interpretation of the ballots correctly? We determine that, and then we bring the public in. Nancy was one of the ones that came in and participated with us on that, and we always involve both parties, the representative of both parties, whoever is the chairman. They appoint someone to come in and do that, but we also invite the public to do it. And we had public come in this year and do that. We give them what's called a test deck, and it's a deck of 25 ballots, and they vote those ballots, and then we give them a tally sheet. They hand tally the count on that. Then they come in to our office. We have them vote all of those ballots on the machine, and then we also scan those in. We compare the electronic tabulation of the results. We compare the scanning tabulation of the results to the hand count. It has to match exactly. We actually had one person miscount their hand tally, and so the numbers didn't match. And when they don't match, you have to find out why. Same thing with balancing. You have to find out why does it not match. So we went in as a group and we re-tallied all of her vote counts. We re-hand counted, and we determined her hand count was wrong. We found where the problem was. We found where she had actually given a vote to someone else, and she should have given them, tallied it to where it went to someone else. So we zero balance every time, and it's a great process to test the machine's interpretation of what the ballot should look like. Then after, we do a risk limiting audit, and we have a huge database that is called a CVR, Cast Vote Record, and y'all can hook me whenever I need to get off, because I know I have a lot to talk about. But it's called a CVR, Cast Vote Record. What it is it's the machine's interpretation of the ballot. So if the ballot is voted a certain way, whomever for president, whether they didn't vote for president, it is a huge database and a huge Excel program that has the candidate and the issue listed out, and then how did that ballot vote. So To give you an example, back to your ICX, your machine ballot, since we scanned this as a sample, you can see a little stamped numbering system there. That's the date, the month, date, and year that we scanned that. That is the time, the exact time to the second that that ballot was scanned. The first number in the next sequence and the third sequence is 1 because we have one scanner, and that scanner is named number 1. So that's the scanner number. The second is the batch number. The third is the ballot number. We scan everything in batches of 50. So we know that it's scanner number 1. That's a given because we only have one scanner. Batch number, it can be batch number 1 through however many batches that we receive. Ballot number 1 through 50. To where if there's a question, which we've never had a question during the risk limiting audit, but if there's a question, like if the public wants to come in and audit our cast vote record interpretation, we can pull those batches and we can say, just randomly tell us what batch you want, what ballot you want us to pull, and we'll compare it to the cast vote record. So we can go to the batch, we can go to the bin, we can go to the exact ballot that way, and we can compare it. Yes, it is exact. So that's another audit that we conduct, and we involve both parties to do that, and the public is invited and involved in that also. At the very end of everything, you've heard of the cure time period, 8 days after the election. That's when we're still receiving and curing signature discrepancies. Signature verification, that's where we use bipartisan teams of judges that look at the back of the envelope where you signed it. They scan the barcode, it brings up that voter's records. They compare that wet signature to all of the signatures that we have on file. So it's where you registered to vote, where you got your driver's license, anything that you've done with the state at all the ballots that you've voted in the past. We could have 20 years of signatures on file. They compare that to the database, to the signatures in the database. They either accept it because yes, it is an exact match, or they reject it because it is not a match. They all agree, the team agrees. When they reject it, it goes back to my office and we notify the elector. Hey, you have a signature discrepancy. Can you come to our office and validate your discrepancy? It may be that they broke their hand and they're having a hard time writing with their left hand and their signature is different. This past election, what we had was we had a child had gone off to college, and their vote, they didn't change their mailing address for their ballot. I think I was talking to Barbara about this. She said her son's ballot had come to their house because he didn't change the mailing address. Well, it wasn't Barbara that did this. I want to be real clear with that. Another situation, the parent talked on the phone with the child and said, how do you want me to vote your ballot? They voted it and they signed the child's name. It's not going to be the same, and it got rejected. It came back to our office. That is illegal. You cannot vote someone else's ballot. You cannot sign someone else's name or anything. It will get rejected. And that was how we were able to vet the discrepancy, and how that happened is we notify the elector. They call their mom, what's going on? What'd you do? You know, kind of thing. So we found that out, but that is not malicious. That was, so we don't send that person to the district attorney's office because we feel like that was just out of sheer ignorance and their vote didn't count. But in the event that it was malicious, that there was the intent to vote someone else's ballot, we send those to the district attorney and it goes to law enforcement at that point. So that's a real important factor of the follow-up with signature verification. And I've gotten a lot of questions about this. At the end of the election, when we've got our results, we compile all of the results. We compare the tally, the ultimate vote tally to the tally on our cast vote record. And then we take it on a separate device and we upload it to the Secretary of State's office. There's been a lot of concern in the community that we don't verify those numbers once it goes up to the Secretary of State's office, and that whomever at that entity flips and changes our votes. That does not happen because we do verify those numbers. We know exactly how many votes whomever got whatever proposition got, and we follow it all the way up, and then we check the website and we look to see, yes, that is to the vote exact numbers. So that's a very important piece that Colorado does, that I don't know if other states do that or not. I can't speak for other states, but I can absolutely speak for Montrose County because I'm directly involved in that, and I know what our processes are, so I can speak for other counties for that, knowing that they follow other processes. That's pretty much the summary that I have. As you know, there's a ton of information involved in the election process. You're welcome to come by our office, pick our brains. We're very transparent and open to any questions. We want to answer your questions and address all of your concerns. Ask any one of our election judges, and they will be glad to address anything that any question that you have also.
Okay.
Oh, here's another thing. Nancy wanted me to point out to everybody. This is just an everyday thing for me. None of our machines are connected to the internet. I talked about how you have to have a paper trail. None of our machines are connected to the internet. We have no internet capability where our election central is. They're connected to to electricity because they have to run that way, but there is no internet involved, and there is no Bluetooth involved. There's no modem involved. We have none of that. No internet, no Bluetooth, no wireless, no anything. Any other questions?
We'll do questions, and we'll try and do it this way. Nancy, if you'll join Tressa, they'll share a mic up there, and I'll pass you the handheld so people can hear your question and address it to either of those two ladies.
Thank you, ladies, for the information. Tessa, I have a question for you. A person tries to do this two-vote deal. They vote downstairs for the ballot, the drop-off box, and they go upstairs and vote again. Why is that vote not just completely canceled completely?
Well, they're eligible elector, and they're guaranteed their right by law to have a vote. Now, if they try to vote twice, that piece is illegal, and that's where the district attorney comes in and vets that process. But we're required by law to count one vote per one eligible elector, whether it was malicious or not.
Other questions?
Here's one right here.
Rumor has it there was issues in Mesa County for the 2020 election, and I was wondering if there was a brief explanation, or is that anything you're familiar with?
I'm pretty familiar with it. What I can say is they claim to have evidence with it. I met with Janet Rowland last night, who is the chairman of the Board of County Commissioners and who is helping run that election up there. The one thing that I'll say is when it comes to evidence, my understanding is that Tina claims that she captured the software from the previous election as well as captured the software after the upgrade and trusted build, and that she is questioning the difference of those two pieces of software. Here's what I would say true evidence would be. She's already run the election on the old software with the voted accepted ballots. Take those exact same ballots and run them on the same election equipment using the upgraded trusted build software, and if the results were tallied incorrectly or differing from the old election results, from the previous election results on the previous software, there's your evidence. There's your evidence of vote flipping. There's your evidence of changing the ballot after it goes through the scanner. That's what clear evidence would be. But just to claim that election records were erased, that's what happens in an upgrade. And we're notified by the Secretary of State, as well as this is just what we do. We back up all of our election records, all of our electronic records before they even come in. We do that before they even get there for an upgrade. When you upgrade your phone, when you upgrade your computer at home, it will erase the old software and it'll replace the old software for the new one. So that's just part of the process. The evidence would have been hard evidence if since she had run the election on the previous software, run the exact same ballots, same election on the new software. If the results were different, there's your evidence. And she did not do that. Nor has anyone else done that in Mesa County.
Any other questions?
He had a question that has an answer.
Okay.
Thank you, ladies, for the work you do. Could you just speak generally about the role of election integrity and the importance to democracy, the skepticism, like the impact that can have?
I'm trying to figure out what I have not already said when it comes to integrity, because it is a critical piece of it, and that's what I want to stress is all of the components that we have in place that ensure integrity. But integrity also comes from the election official and also comes from the election judges, and that's why we use teams. Not that we don't trust our judges. If I didn't trust one of my staff and if I didn't trust one of my judges, we wouldn't be using them. That's a critical piece of it also, is that we trust our staff and our election judges trust us. If they didn't trust us, they would be going to the public and saying, there's corruption in that office, there's problems in that office, we need to address that. But we all trust each other and we all support each other and work well together. Yes.
I was going to say, you hear so much today about division between Republicans and Democrats, and we have worked with most of these people for a number of years, and we get along beautifully. It's so terrific. I really want you to know that. The other thing, if you don't have faith in the election system, you might not vote.
Right.
And that is very bad, not to have your voice heard, because someone else is going to vote and they will pass the laws anyway, and then you will be subject to.
Yeah. So I think integrity comes in two ways: following great processes that ensure integrity, but choosing to follow those processes. After the previous election, when we were hearing about voter fraud, when we were hearing about ballots coming in and being counted in the middle of the night and truckloads coming in or coming up, being pulled out from under the table, that's election official fraud. That's not widespread voter fraud, because it takes an election official to commit fraud. If an election official allows that many ballots to come in and be voted and it's not accounted for and balanced with the number of eligible electors that have voted their ballot and has been vetted through signature verification, that's election official fraud. It's election official fraud to send the bipartisan teams of judges home and then continue to conduct the election in the middle of the night under secrecy. That's election official fraud. And that's where accountability, but also note that that would take collusion. That would take a lot of people involved. My team, the size of Montrose County, there's 4 of us who are directly involved in the election, who literally hands-on every day are involved in it, but then there's other staff that's involved in it also. There's a number of examples that I could give that is the minutia of it, but any one of ours, it would take absolutely all 4 of us and probably a whole lot more of us to know exactly and to fully agree. And if you commit fraud, you can't live with yourself and it eventually comes out. So I think there's a lot of components involved in the integrity piece of it.
One last question.
Brief question for Nancy, and I'll use Amendment 78 as the example. We've watched what's happened in California. Governor Newsom has declared an emergency regarding COVID, and he's bypassed the legislature for virtually everything. Is there any exception in Amendment 78 for those same types of provisions where the governor can just completely do away with the legislature and have his way?
No, we're talking, this would be for custodial funds. Tax funds would be something else, but 78 is only custodial funds, and those come to the state from outside the state for a particular purpose, so I don't think that would be a problem.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. We appreciate you being here. Next week, it's the CEO of DMEA, been a lot of changes there, both in terms of administration, pulling away from tri-state, attempting to go greener. It should be a very interesting presentation. Hopefully we'll see you back next week. Thanks again.